Hello there and welcome to our special coverage. With me, I'm Abdurrahim Kashur, coming to you live from Algiers on Al24 News. As already reported, Russian missiles yesterday targeted Western supplies of weapons in Kiev, the first significant attacks in the city in weeks. It came as Russian President Vladimir Putin smashed out Western deliveries of weapons to Ukraine on Sunday, saying they aim to prolong the war. And he insisted such supplies were unlikely to change the military situation for Ukraine's government, which he said it was merely making up losses of similar rockets. Putin also said if Kiev gets longer-range rockets, Moscow will draw appropriate conclusions and use our means of destruction, which we have plenty of, in order to strike at those objects that we haven't yet struck. This statement came after US sent a rocket system missile to Ukraine. Yet, what makes the situation even intense, the UK government now will send also a cutting-edge rocket system to Ukraine to help troops fight back Russian advance in battle east of the country. It can hit targets up to 50 miles, 18 kilometers away with pinpoint accuracy, according to the Ministry of Defense. The questions that should be raised right now: what is the aim of the Western leaders and what they want to reach by these deliveries? Why Ukraine's president is taking his country to the edge of unknown results? And will Putin use the strong strategic weapons as a threat? All of this is going to be analyzed today in our special coverage by our panel of guests. I'm joined live by Skype by Dr. Lavginder Singh from South Korea, Director of Peace Program at Asia Institute in Seoul, and Mr. Giorgio from Georgia, International Relations Expert. Gentlemen, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to this debate. The discussion begins right after this break. And before we delve into our discussion, let's start with this on tape on today. President Vladimir Zelensky visited the cities of Lysychansk and Soledar after earlier visiting to southeastern Zaporozhye region. And today's latest as well, British Defense Secretary Ben Wallace announced that UK will send its first long-range missiles to Ukraine despite a threat by Russian President Vladimir Putin to the West against delivery of these weapons to Kiev.
After I went with the head of my office to the east, we were in Lysychansk, we were in Soledar. I am proud of everybody I met with, everyone I shook hands with, everyone with whom I connected with and had expressed my support to. We brought something for the military. I will not elaborate in detail on this, and there is something we brought from them to you. This is important. We brought you confidence.
Starting with you, since you are in Europe, Mr. Giorgio Belanishvili from Georgia. How can you consider this visit of the Ukrainian President Zelensky to the eastern part of the country, precisely Donetsk and Lugansk cities at this time? Is it a challenge to Putin saying that I will fight to the last Ukrainian and I won't give up, or just to encourage his soldiers and the Western countries to give him more weapons?
First of all, we should bear in mind that President Zelensky made visits its own sovereign territories, and the intention of and the aim of these visits to support the courage and bravery of Ukrainian soldiers who defend their own country and sovereignty of their own country. However, while Ukrainians are fighting against Russia, they don't defend only their own freedom and sovereignty. They also, at the same time, defend security in a wider range. I mean European and Euro-Atlantic sovereignty. So this visit seems very important for me in this point of view.
Quite important. Mr. Singh, coming back to you, this visit by Zelensky to Ukraine East part isn't risky at the time because could something happen to Ukraine's president, he could be taken by the Russian troops or injured or even killed. Will this lead to the end of this conflict? Will Ukraine army be a surrender?
No, I don't think so. First of all, I would like to say that Ukraine is democracy. The president is democratically elected president, and there is due constitutional mechanism in place in case the president is not there to take his responsibilities. But looking at a bigger picture, I think this war is not what any individuals. This war is being fought for very big geopolitical reasons. Until those political reasons, geopolitical reasons are not reconciled, this war will not end. So this war has got a life ever soon. Until and unless those behind the scene reasons pushing the war, this war cannot end. No matter Zelensky is there, Putin is there, this war will continue to its logical conclusion.
Understood. Same thing for you, Mr. Georgi. Don't you think it is really risky for Mr. Zelensky to go back to the eastern part? Don't you think it's really risky because the Russian troops are advancing over there?
Absolutely. Everything is risky in Ukraine. We see that Russia, in a very aggressive manner, started its unprovoked invasion in Ukraine. And civilian soldiers are suffering from this attack. There is no place in Ukraine, safe place in Ukraine. You just mentioned at the beginning that even Kiev was attacked yesterday, and Odessa and Kharkov are under permanent missile attacks. So any place at the moment in Ukraine, unfortunately, is very risky. So it was very brave step made by Ukrainian president to go directly to the front line in support of their own soldiers.
Very good indeed. Now moving on to the second point, Britain's defense ministry said that early on Sunday, Russian air-launched cruise missiles struck rail infrastructure in Ukraine's capital, Kiev. President Vladimir Putin has warned he would strike new targets in Kiev, in Ukraine, if Western nations supply the country with longer-range missiles. Coming back to you, Mr. Georgi, after this new assault on Ukraine's capital yesterday, it shows that Russia economically and even militarily could maintain its pressure over the Ukrainian lands for a long period. And at the same time, these strikes were a warning to U.S. last delivery. Will they pay attention for their next moves, or they will insist even more to make this situation worse? Like UK now, they are delivering new weapons, although Putin is warning.
If the West will not continue its consolidated support to the Ukraine, will not continue its supply of advanced weapons, this means that Ukraine will be defeated and will suffer partition from the Russian Federation. I don't think that this is a solution of the problem, because after that, Russia probably will be encouraged even more and even make even bigger threat to the other nations as well. To the economy of the Russian Federation, I would state that according to the own Russian state structure, Russian economy already suffers a lot from the sanctions applied by the Western countries against Russia. For example, the GDP this year will decrease at about 8%. Inflation is very high, amounting to the 16%, and it is forecasted to be at around 20% in this year. And the Russian budget, will always have been profited during the high oil prices. This year will be deficited also. So, to my point of view, only consolidated continuation of the consolidating support of Ukraine can make stop Russia and can annihilate the possibility its further aggression.
Perfectly understood. Mr. Singh, what are you saying about this? What do you comment on Mr. Georgi's statement saying that this is not a solution to keep delivering weapons to Ukraine? Kind of, Ukraine is being sacrificed for the sake of the Western's interest.
Yes, just supplying weapons to Ukraine is not a permanent solution of the problem. As I told you, this war is being fought for broader geopolitical reasons. Until those reasons are not reconciled, this war will go on no matter how much weapon they supply to Ukraine. So he's right. You have to look at the bigger reasons, bigger push, which is pushing this war into long and long. So he's maybe right. War cannot end by waging war against each other. I think so.
Mr. Singh, saying with you, Russia's main target behind this military operation was to stop the NATO expansion eastward Europe. But now, Sweden and Finland has applied to join this alliance. Could we say Russia has failed to reach the ultimate goal, which is to stop NATO expansion to the Russian border?
No, sir, we cannot. It is too early to predict the result of the war. I think NATO stopping Ukraine from joining NATO was the surface reason for the war. War is being fought for bigger reasons, and this reason war will go on no matter how much Sweden and Finland, other countries join the NATO. So ultimate purpose of this war is just not stopping the expansion of NATO. It is stopping the USA trying to recontrol of the region. So this war is being fought for bigger reasons, and this war will continue until those bigger pictures are reconciled. So Sweden and Finland are just a smaller part of the picture. I think so.
Quite understood. Now, moving on to another point to be discussed related to the economic matter. The Marriott hotel chain has announced it and EU restrictions will make it impossible for Marriott to continue to operate or franchise hotels in the Russian market. Mr. Georgi, the war marks a geopolitical crisis. It will result in Russia's exclusion from the Western economic and political order. How long do you think these sanctions will remain in place? Can Russia find in China and other Asian, African countries the alternative?
How long will sanctions remain in place? It depends on the outcome of the war and what will we have in the future, and how will Russia behave, how will it change its aggressive politics. Regarding the bypassing sanctions, Moscow already is looking for such countries to help it bypassing the sanctions and at some point mitigating the sanctions effect. But now, as we see, China is very restrained to providing sufficient help, sufficient support in this case to the Russian Federation. And it is very important because China has a huge role in today's international politics. As regards of Middle Eastern countries, they also have huge importance as well because they are able to provide the energy supplies to the European Union and the other countries, and this is very important to regulate the international oil and gas market today. As the prices of oil and gas has been rocketed up after the Russia has been sanctioned.
Perfect. Derived from your words, Mr. Georgi, don't you think that U.S. is making the same story with China, like Russia, Ukraine? They are trying to help Taiwan over the China sovereignty over there. Don't you think that there will be another escalation over that part of the continent, I mean the east of Asia and Europe, between China, Taiwan?
I completely disagree with you that U.S. has a policy of provoking Russia or China. Let's go back to the autumn of the last year. United States started its huge diplomatic efforts to stop, to prevent Russian invasion of Ukraine. First of all, high-ranking diplomats and politicians were dispatched to Moscow to negotiate with the officials there to avoid their plans to restrict their plans and of the Ukraine invasion, but it unfortunately did not work. Then United States started to consolidate Western powers and to show that the West is united to prevent Russian military aggression. Also, it did not work. Then Western powers started to provide weapons to Ukraine just to show that Ukraine is capable to defend itself. But it did not stop Moscow either. And on the 21st of February, it proclaimed the independence of so-called Lugansk and Donetsk republics, just in seeking for the cause of its military invasion to Ukraine.
Quite understood. Mr. Singh, with these sanctions continuing, the West will have recognized its global supply chains, including for merchandises supplied by Russia, Ukraine, and the wider region will remain a zone of instability for many years to come. What's your reading on this? And I mean, how long it may take to bring back the situation as it was in the beginning, before this military operation?
Yes, that's very true. Currently, global supplies are being reorganized. Both are trying to learn without each other. But we must remember, Russia is not North Korea. Russia is one of the biggest economies in the world. It is the 11th largest economy in the world. It is a supplier of 1.6% of all commodities in the world. It's one of the greatest producers of fertilizers and grains. So no matter how best try to decouple Russia from the world economy, it will be a very difficult task for them. So I think it will take some time before they succeed in their project, because we are already having can see clearly the impact of decoupling. Inflation is already rising; it's almost 6.1% already. So best may try to decouple, may not succeed. And how long it will take for the situation to become normal? I think it will take quite some time before the things get normal. I think things will get worse before they get normal. So we should keep our fingers crossed.
Quite understood. Now, moving on to another point to be discussed. Ukraine has denounced French President Emmanuel Macron after he suggested it is imperative that Russia is not humiliated. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba reached on Saturday saying such calls only humiliate France and any country taking a similar position. The French president has said that Russia must not be humiliated in Ukraine to allow an improvement in diplomatic relations between the West and Moscow whenever the war comes to an end. Mr. Georgi, coming back to a way of joining NATO membership, the French President Emmanuel Macron said it will take decades for Ukraine to be accepted into the European Union. And he also said that Russia not going to be humiliated after the war. At the same time, France also now is giving weapons to Ukraine. So how can you consider this contradiction? France and the EU in general are trying to help Ukraine. At the same time, they are refusing Ukraine to be joined.
You know, joining of the European Union is a quite difficult procedure, and countries who are willing to join the European Union have to meet very high criteria. The first thing is to give now not only Ukraine but also Georgia and Moldova the status of candidate countries, which the three countries applied for. As regards of humiliation, it depends. You know, France and President Emmanuel Macron has its prominent role in European and Euro-Atlantic affairs and in European and Euro-Atlantic security. But what means humiliation of Russia is a huge question. maybe for someone and for me, it is to compromise with Russia at the expense of sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, which isn't the right way to do, and which won't lead to the peace and security in a wider European region. I don't think that compromises at the expense of Ukraine is a right choice. On the other hand, looking for the peaceful solution, it's a correct way. That's why President Macron is almost in everyday contact with President Putin to find a peaceful solution. But Russia sees only one outcome from this aggression. This is a partition of Ukraine that makes difficult to reach a peaceful solution of the conflict.
Understood. Mr. Singh, what are you saying about this kind of contradiction between the EU leaders? I mean, what is the position of France in this war between Russia and Ukraine?
As I told you, the European countries are still divided. They want to keep Russia happy as well as they want to wage a war with him. So it's not easy for European country. As you know, Russia is basically a European country. A lot of Russians live there. So it's not easy to completely cut off from Russia. So they are also having a very serious situation, what to do. So sometimes they go one step forward, back, two steps forward, back. So it's very difficult for them to decide. So I think the statement of French president clearly demonstrates the situation, how difficult it is for Europe to take a clear-cut position over this war.
Quite understood. Now, moving on, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's visit to Serbia has been cancelled after countries around Serbia closed their airspace to his aircraft. A senior foreign ministry sources told the Interfax news agency on Sunday. The source confirmed a Serbian media report that said Bulgaria, North Macedonia and Montenegro had closed the airspace to the plane that would have carried Moscow's top diplomat to Belgrade on Monday. Mr. Georgi, first of all, what are you saying about this? And don't you think that US-Ukraine allies are very late to aid Ukraine now with strong, effective weapons?
I'm not sure that if I correctly understood your question. Can you repeat it?
What are you saying about the prevention of the airplane of Mr. Lavrov in the airspace between Macedonia and Serbia?
Yeah. It was confirmed by Russian sources, I mean official sources as well, that the airspace was closed for the Russian foreign minister airplane to visit Serbia. I think it is very important point because the European countries showed the united position against Russian aggression. So I think that the united position, not only Western states, but also other states like China, India, and so on and so forth, is very important to show Russia that the countries are united and countries are quite strong in their desire to prevent Russian aggression. Otherwise, there is no way that Russia will stop, and there is no way to find a fair solution for this situation that we have now in Ukraine.
Understood. Mr. Singh, after this military operation comes to an end, do you think that Russia will be accepted into the European society? And will Russian companies and businessmen regain their influence, or is all lost for good? For example, now Lavrov's visit to Serbia has been cancelled after countries around Serbia closed their airspace. In terms of business, Roman Abramovich lost his English club FC Chelsea.
I think so. I hope so. As I said, Russia is basically a European country. A lot of Russians live in Europe. So it's not easy to completely cut off Russians from Europe. So as soon as war ends, I think situation will become, as to people very normal, very soon. So because of deep integration of Russian population with the European population, it's not possible to completely cut off these people for a long time. I think this cancelling of the flight path is just an emotional response from Europe and just symbolic. But don't have any strategic value. To cut off Russia from Europe will have serious implication for the entire European country. So European country I think know very well what does it mean to completely cut off communication with the Soviet Union. Russia. So it will have they I think only symbolic meanings.
Now, one of the most important points to be discussed, we will come and end the show with it. South Korea and the United States said that they fired 8 surface-to-surface missiles early on Monday, responding to a barrage of short-range ballistic missiles launched by North Korea on Sunday. Washington and Seoul officials also recently warned that Pyongyang appeared ready to resume nuclear weapons tests for the first time since 2017. South Korea's new president vowed to take a together stance against North Korea, and early Monday may have been a glimpse of that approach.
North Korea's nuclear and missile threats are getting sophisticated. It fired various ballistic missiles yesterday. North Korea's nuclear and missile programs are reaching the levels that threaten not only the peace of the Korean Peninsula, but also in Northeast Asia and the world.
Mr. Singh, since you are located in South Korea, how can you read the escalation happening between the two Koreas these last couple of months, especially after the last US drills with South Korea? Pyongyang launched new missiles tests. Was this a new test, a warning, or the usual situation in North Korea?
I think it's work as usual. Since 1984, when North Korea started testing its missile, it has tested missiles more than 150 times. So nothing new about it. I think this is a mere strategic posturing, so they do it from time to time. But what is happening now is a new alliance between Russia, China, and North Korea is emerging. As you know, recently Russia and China joined to stop USA from imposing new sanctions. And that is changing the strategic environment of the region. If this alliance gets power, gets strengthened, in the future it can have a deep impact on the strategic environment of the region. So that is what we are worried about. So missile test itself is not much important, but what we should worry is emerging a partnership between Russia and China and North Korea. As you know, Russians are visiting North Korea more and more. Serious delegations have visited North Korea in recent times. So Russia playing an active role in Korean Peninsula is something new, which we should worry about. I think it will have a very serious impact on strategic environment of the region.
Mr. Georgi, what is your comment on this? I mean, what is the regarding of Europe toward the situation in Asia? Don't you think that if, as Mr. Singh has stated, if an alliance occurred between Russia, North Korea, and China, don't you think that this will make the situation even worse?
Absolutely, absolutely. We see in contemporary world that the word between democracies and authoritarian states is becoming wider, and the contradiction between these two camps is becoming even stronger. So sometimes, from time to time, democracies have to show their military capabilities just in prevention of possible military aggressions from authoritarian states. But I hope that China, which seems to me more wise international player rather than Russia and North Korea, which is totally, authoritarian states, will not lean toward the escalation and will continue to play on its economic muscles rather than military one.
Quite understood. Last word to conclude. Mr. Singh, as you have already stated, what if this alliance already occurred between Russia, North Korea, and China? What is your expectation for the future months?
I think if it really happened, then it will have a serious balance of power shift in the region. Three countries uniting hands will be very difficult to handle for Japan, South Korea, and USA. I think then we are heading towards a very serious bar-like situation. So we should be very, very worried about this emerging alliance.
Quite understood. With this, we reach the end of our points in our show. Thank you, dear guests, for your thorough analysis. Mr. Georgi from Georgia, Mr. Singh from South Korea, thank you ever so much for being with us. Thank you also, our dear viewers, for keeping us here on Al 24 News with us. For now, bye-bye.